Yeah? Libby? Lib?
Hi. Was I reading too loud?
How long have you been down here?
I think I woke up about 3.
Whenever you wake up, it's about 3.
I have to check with my mother. It may have been the time I was born.
Trying to relive the experience? Want me to hold you up by the ankles and slap your behind?
Let's not and say we did.
What's wrong? Couldn't have been me. I brushed my teeth, powdered between my toes, offered you sex, which you politely refused, somewhat to my relief. What's the matter, Lil?
Next Friday's my parents' anniversary. Their 39th.
I can see why that might bring them down.
Ralph Leonard called today. He and Betty are going to throw them a surprise party on the 16th in San Francisco. I know we always check with one another, but I said no.
Huh? Something going on with your folks? Trouble in paradise?
No, they're fine.
What is it?
If this was Manila, where you could have a person killed for $25, I'd pay $50 to have Ralph Leonard killed twice.
Are we both talking about good old kindly check-grabbing, back-slapping Uncle Ralphie Leonard?
The man is a bastard.
Oh.
Thanks to my parents, I was probably the most photographed child in America after Shirley Temple. They were more like paparazzi than parents. The last time I was home, Mother dragged out some of the old photo albums. Libby, the early years from pablum to puberty. I always dread looking at those because his face keeps appearing over and over. Dad's best friend, Ralph. Ralph and Dad on the boat. Ralph and Dad holding up fish. Ralph and Dad holding up Ralph Jr. and me holding up fish. Get the picture? He was always there. And Betty, too. They were a foursome. You've seen those home movies of the four of them doing the hula in Honolulu?
Racing to the toilets in Tijuana? Yes, I've had the pleasure.
Well, that's how it was. And I loved it. The more grown-ups around a kid, it's like being surrounded by big, friendly trees. And then one day, all the friendly went out of it. I was 8 years old and adorable. I was walking home from school, and up pulls old Ralph and offers me a ride. Of course, I knew better than to get into a car with a stranger, someone fly casting for little girls using M&Ms as bait. But this was Uncle Ralphie. It was like getting into a car with Art Linkletter, for God's sake. Anyway, off we drove, and he asked me about school, my favorite subjects, teachers, ta-dum, and dropped me at my front steps. The same thing a week later, but with less conversation. The third time, there was no talk at all. And he didn't take me straight home. He drove to a hardware store, said he had to pick up a few things. When he parked the car, I found out one of them was my skirt. He started touching me. At least he tried. Now, my parents were not the most enlightened people. My mother had always said there was only one thing boys wanted from girls. Unfortunately, she never told me what that one thing was. I found out the hard way. You know, I wasn't afraid. I didn't know enough to be afraid. I felt mortified. I was at that age where kids start feeling very private about their bodies. It was strange. I felt like I was standing outside the car, watching the scene through the window. Sound seemed magnified, the traffic, the dashboard clock, Ralph's voice saying how much he liked me and how this was his way of showing me and how if I really liked him, I'd let him and so forth. This kind of pathetic, romper room heavy breathing. Only this isn't Billy Cantor, the 7-year-old pre-med student who lived next door. This is Uncle Ralphie. But by now, he'd lost his uncle papers, at least with me. It took me a moment to collect the thimbleful of senses I had at that age. I moved as far away from him as I could. His face was contorted like there was this struggle going on inside of him that he was losing badly. He stared at me. Only he didn't see me, not me. I'd become this terrific sex bomb, all 58 pounds of me, including my retainer.
You're incredible.
Don't you tell your mom or dad, he said. They won't believe you. They'll think you're a troublemaker.
Headed you off at the pass, huh?
I didn't tell them. I've never told a soul except you.
Was that the end of it?
For a while. He kept his distance. No more lifts home, no more come into my parlor, or in his case, Studebaker. As time went by and there was no indication from him, not a leer or a wink, I started to think, well, maybe it never really happened. Maybe it was something I'd seen on the Twilight Zone. And then the next summer there was a rerun.
God.
My parents had this cottage up at Lake Arrowhead, and Ralph and Betty were next door with all their kids. More white teeth and blonde hair than the whole Hitler Youth. I was out in the woods collecting acorns or something, very Little Red Riding Hood. And suddenly there's Ralph. I guess the sight of me in my bathing suit with my pipe cleaner legs and my size 1 breast was too much for him because he got all turned on, got that front seat look again. The second he reached for me, I ran, stumbled, fell through the woods, and finally locked myself in my room. It wasn't until I saw this pathetic little kid in the mirror that I started crying. I cut my knee when I ran, and I was sure my leg was going to have to come off, and I'd just gotten this great pair of sneakers, and I'd only ever be able to wear one of them. And then I got one of those too early lessons in self-control. I made myself stop crying, washed up, performed major surgery on my knee by using 2 Band-Aids, and vowed I would tell my parents. That was it, once and for all. When I got downstairs, there they were, the 3 of them, laughing. Oh, Ralph's eyes weren't laughing. He gave me a quick, hard look that just nailed me to the wall. When I lied to my mother about what had happened to my knee, something silly, I think I said I cut it making a sandwich. He gave me a conspiratorial smile. I could have killed him for making us partners in a smarmy little crime. And then came the single most horrible moment in my entire mini life. I told my parents I was going outside to play and gave them each a kiss, and then one of them said, "Don't forget Uncle Ralph. Don't you have a kiss for him?" For an hour, I scrubbed the spot on my forehead his lips touched. I really thought I was going to rub the skin off and go right through to the skull. Don't forget Uncle Ralph. Good old Uncle Ralph the Ripper. At all those inevitable tribal gatherings, the graduations, the anniversaries, there we'd be, pretending Uncle Ralph was only Uncle Ralph. Well, he was able to paw me publicly, although as soon as I started developing, I think he lost interest in me. By the time I was 12, I was over the hill for him. But oh God, how I hated the pretense.
I think of all the times that I've smiled and shaken his wandering, pudgy, sweaty hand. Why don't I call the maggot brain right now, huh? Maybe his wife would be interested in the details. I bet if he ever touched her after all these years, she'd probably think she was being attacked by a stranger. Why didn't you tell me about this before? I would just love to go up there and break his face.
Damn it, Richard! I have lived with this for 25 years. Can't you just be here with me for 5 minutes and absorb it?
It's difficult to hold it in. How did you do it for so long? You've always been so outspoken. I mean, somebody's rotten to a kid in the market and you're ready to run over him with your shopping cart. You're always encouraging your own kids to speak up.
Well, then maybe Ralph's not completely to blame. Not if I conspired with him in my silence.
Oh, Libby, that's crazy. That's wrong. You're so smart. Sometimes you go right into dumb. There's no way that you could be accountable for what happened. You were a baby. What an ordeal. Sure couldn't have done much for your faith in men.
Men. I never allowed how I felt about Ralph to spread to the whole species. For a long time, I felt more comfortable with men than I did with women. It took a while to lose that sense of suspicion regarding other women, that they were my natural enemies, that they were competition for that very shallow pool of eligible men.
With your looks?
Everybody's looks always look better than your own. I naturally gravitated towards men. I always had a boyfriend, preferably a BMOC. First off, I can still remember Ricky Wilder in kindergarten.
BMOK.
Ooh, fastest kid on the playground. Scabby knees, droopy socks, gorgeous. It was Ricky right up until the 6th grade. And then until the 8th, Kenny Barber. My first letterman and open-mouthed kisser.
Moving right along to high school?
Quarterbacks, student body presidents, yearbook editors, and track stars. I've always had a weakness for men who can really move their tails.
I go as fast as I can.
I wasn't promiscuous. They were all long-term relationships, a year or more. I was still a virgin right up until my senior prom.
Libby, let's just continue with our policy of not giving each other detailed accounts of our sexual histories. I don't need the retroactive jealousy or the possible future craziness.
If you're really worried, I promise I will not ask you to reciprocate.
I've got nothing to tell. I'm still a virgin. I've been lying to you all these nights. Go ahead. Senior prom.
My parents had another orgy of picture-taking when Neil arrived to pick me up in his powder blue tux and rented limo, which we shared with Ursula Zabolts and Kevin Shapiro, who spent the better part of the evening looking for parts of their bodies they'd never found before.
A prom is a prom is a prom.
Anyway, after the prom, there was one of those all-night parties at someone's house.
Gidget makes out.
I told my parents it was just for the girls.
Oh, you were half right.
There was a lot of drinking going on. Bourbon, I seem to recall. Some people were throwing up.
Please. I think I'd rather hear about the sex than the vomit. I'm funny that way.
Some of the boys had been drafted, and 1 or 2 were going to wait it out in Canada. It wasn't long before there was a rash of pregnancies and some other rather suspicious rashes much sooner than that. Neil and I found a walk-in closet and blocked the door with our heads.
Neil was your date?
Neil Sargent, editor of the yearbook, which explains how I made the cover of Lighthouse 64.
Well, if you're going to sleep with a boss.
Very little sleeping when you're using a ski boot for a pillow. Anyway, the yearbook came out a few months before Neil and I, how you say, did it.
What did you think?
Frankly, I thought it was one of the most oversold, overrated, hyped-up acts imaginable. I simply could not understand all the rave reviews sex had been getting.
An anticlimax, you might say. Did your editor know what he was doing?
It was his first time, too.
Oh, 2 virgins in a walk-in closet. God help me.
It was okay. It was just that afterwards, thinking about it, I couldn't see what there was about sex that would make Ralph such a furtive, salivating character in his search for it. I couldn't understand why anyone would have to ravage Girl Scouts just to feel the way I did.
In your mind at the time?
Oh, his face wasn't looming over me. It was more like a dot in my consciousness. Like he was way up in the last row of the bleachers watching me in the dirty old men's section. Of course, part of that initial dissatisfaction with sex had to do with the fact that we were both so green behind the ears.
What were you doing back there?
I don't know if practice makes perfect, but eventually I got the hang of it.
I've noticed.
Thank you.
No, what I mean is, you've always seemed so unneurotic, erotic-wise. Whatever else goes wrong, our sex is the one solid constant.
Do you know why our sex is so good? At least one of the reasons?
We just have it mastered, that's all. Mastered and Johnson.
No, really.
Okay, really. What?
Because I feel secure with you in a way that I never did with any other man. I was forced into an awareness of sexuality way before I was ready. I hated my childhood ending when I was 8 years old. That's a special time of innocence when fantasy means so much more than reality. It's like never having a chance to believe in Santa Claus.
What about him? Strange man, giving children candy, asking them to sit on his lap. Anybody home?
You caught me at just the right time. If you had met me a few years earlier, you would have thought I was a complete phony.
A few years earlier, I might not have minded some refreshing dishonesty. For a long time, my ego was on demand feeding.
I used to see myself as this fantastic, glittering prize. The guys were supposed to win. A loving cup with a great pair of handles. I was a fox, and I knew it. I learned all the tricks. How to walk, how to dress, how to look at someone. So he thought I was actually listening to him. Also, I could appeal to what I assumed was uppermost and lowermost in men's minds. I wasn't falling into bed every 5 minutes, far from it. The goal was to make that possibility seem...
Like a possibility.
Right.
Teasing, I believe, is the Latin word for that.
The result of that first experience of being the thing that is going to make someone else feel very good. No better than one of those creepy life-size rubber dolls they advertise for those men who want to share an exciting evening for one. I suppose that's Ralph's legacy. Being thought of as just an object of pleasure. Only Ralph's not alone. An awful lot of men see women that way. I'm not sure it isn't lust that makes the world go round. Hold me.
What's the matter?
I don't believe it. I've been pouring my heart out to you, telling you fears and feelings I've never shared with anybody, and you've used it as nothing but grist for your fantasies.
Libby, I'm not made of stone. I was listening.
Oh, yeah. Listening with one ear, leering with the other.